Hello everyone, Victoria from Writing Elephant here, and today I'm here talking to you about negative press, negative comments, negative criticism. I ran into an instance over the past week where I had an author reach out to me to review their book. They're a self-published author, so I was like, yeah, sure, of course, I'd love to. I started reading the book, I was really excited, and then I realized something was wrong. It's like, okay, I just kept reading, got to the end, I was like, oh no. I was like, okay, really don't like this book. And it wasn't that I didn't like the book, it was that it was some very bad editorial choices on the author's part. Because they're self-published, it's much harder to find an editor, to find a publisher. So being self-published, you have a lot of what I call roadblocks in the way. And because I reviewed a lot of this, because I have myself researched it, because I want to eventually publish, it was eventually like, okay, so they wrote it, they edited it somewhere, I hope, and then they published it. What happened during this middle piece? What happened during the editing process? I read it, like certain sections again, just to make sure I wasn't missing the author's interpretation. And then I really just, I was like, I can't even give a slightly normally with the slightly bad reviews I do, I've done one so far, and it was P.S. I Like You on my blog, which I'll leave that in the link below. I was able to find something positive, and then a few things negative, and then something positive again, which after years of being in writing workshops, I was able to figure out the golden method, which is what most places call it. And I couldn't do that with this. And I felt so bad. I had a knot in the pit of my stomach. I was like, I don't even want to write this review because it's going to be in such a negative light that I can't do that to a fellow writer. I can't do that to somebody who put their heart and soul into something and then put it out by themselves. They didn't have anybody guiding them along the way. They did it by themselves. So I couldn't do that. So I reached out to the author. I was like, hey, and I explained the whole situation. I was like, I can't review it. I just feel like I'd bring such negative press to your book. I really don't want to do that. Here's some of my helpful hints. I'm like, if you want me to help you with reworking it, by all means. And they were like, okay. And then they got back to me and we started a different conversation where hopefully the author and I are kind of seeing eye to eye, kind of on the same page, and we can help each other out. Us writers, we gotta stick together, you know? After years of being in writing workshops and being a part of what I like to call a little writers community, it's hard to take off the writer's blinders and see your flaws in a piece. And it's going to be a little bit of story time, so this video might be a little bit long. My first instance with negative reviews, negative press, was when I was 14, and it was from a piece that I had published on a Quizilla account. Now, if you know what Quizilla is, you know the underbelly of the fan fiction world before fanfiction.net was cool. But Quizilla was a place where you could publish, in the form of quizzes, stories. So you'd copy and paste your story into a quiz. The bottom question would be, did you like this? And you'd just click the button, and then you could go and you could leave a review. And that's how we got away with publishing fan fiction on Quizilla, when it was supposed to be quizzes. But I had done that. I had put the piece out there for people to review, and I gave one hard copy to a friend of mine, and she's the only person who has a copy of this in the world, because I don't even have a copy of it anymore. So friend came back, she's like, oh, I love it, it's fabulous, it's great. One person came back from Quizilla and went line by line and tore it to shreds. Like, my 14-year-old heart was broken. That's how upset I was. I immediately deleted my Quizilla account, deleted it so hard off my hard drive of my computer, I think I crashed it. Obviously, I'm kidding, but seriously. I deleted it, and I never wanted to touch that piece again. I had poured my heart and soul to it. I thought it was a really good piece. I thought I had a really good idea. I thought it was original. And then somebody, pardon the unprofessional language, they shit all over it. It was not a happy camper. So I deleted it. That one friend, and she knows who she is, she's the only person who has a copy of that original that I published. And I say published on an online format. Later on in high school, I had a writing workshop, but we didn't really do any peer-to-peer reviews. Now, having that peer-to-peer review, believe it or not, is more helpful than having instructor feedback. I really didn't have that in that workshop. And then I went to college and had a rude awakening. So first 3 writing classes I took, one class we didn't really do peer-to-peer reviews. Second class, we did have peer-to-peer reviews, and this is actually a very funny story. So the instructor said, oh yeah, we're gonna do peer-to-peer reviews, and I want you to write all over their manuscript. Do it. Just write all over it. Draw an alligator if you have to, which is a phrase I use quite frequently, is if you're so bored with my paper, please draw an alligator on it, means that there's something wrong with it. And it's a courteous way of saying that you're bored versus, saying it's shit and writing it several hundred times. I'd rather you just draw an alligator and move on. So in that class, I had 2 people who I distinctly remember reviewing, and I reviewed in color pencil at the time. Red was fixed now, blue was kind of important to fix, but not too really. And then green was like, okay, this is nice. And then I used other colors as I saw fit, because I could. But I remember editing 2 people's papers, and I believe at least one of them, English was their second language. So he kind of relied on me as my English expertise, to help him edit his paper. And that was actually kind of nice, and I felt like I did something for that person. The second person, again, I believe English was their second language, but I wasn't 100% sure. But I edited her paper, and she was very thankful for it. That was a good experience with that. And that was when I was still in my, I'm going to tear them to shred phase, because that's how I had learned to do critiquing. Third class, I realized, oh yeah, I know how to edit for the most part. I'm pretty good at that. I asked the teacher how I could better my editing skills to get better papers, and he goes, oh, well, it's all in the book, so you should really pretty much be able to teach yourself. What? So the dude behind the desk was getting paid roughly $20 per hour to tell me to teach myself. Right there with that. No, thank you. There were 5 to 6 high schoolers in that class doing a combined term, so they used half their year at high school, half their year at college, which was actually kind of cool. Unfortunately for them, they happen to be in this class with this teacher who tells students to teach themselves. I'm not paying over $600 per class, an additional $50 per book for you to tell me to teach myself. I could have done that online. No. So these 5 to 6 high schoolers, after I had told the teacher to go, actually not this, if you know sign language, you know what I mean. They kind of clustered to me. I was like, hey, what do I do? So again, I became the shredder, and I shredded these people's work. One girl decided to write a paper trying to convince the reader to become a vegan, and she had used all these sources like PETA, and they were all biased sources. Now, when you write a compare and contrast paper, when you're trying to convince your reader, you really shouldn't be using biased stuff at all. You should be using good science, stuff that's not biased but presents both arguments. This poor girl did not do that, and I shredded her paper to bits. I feel horrible about it now, but one good thing did come out of it. She did learn that you can't use bias research, and that although she had really, really good writing, that some of her, one of her sentences was, and it was a PETA statistic, I believe, that the amount of gas that a cow produces is affecting our ozone layer. And I was like, so you're telling me that me eating a cheeseburger is contributing to our ozone layer depleting? No, me killing that cow to eat it is actually helping the ozone. And I was able to flip her argument as she saw my point. So again, I had a really good experience with that. The person on the other end, on the other hand, did not. And although she was very thankful, she thanked me for it afterwards. She had contacted me after to review a couple of her papers. I don't know if she ended up liking me or just appreciated the fact that she eventually got an A. last story, actually not last story, but second to last story, and this was the most important, and it's when I had a switch. I had the rude awakening. Was a creative writing class with a overly kind teacher. I wasn't one for overly kind teachers. I was more like a rough and tumble, like give me the bad news first type kid. And I say kid because I was like 19. She hands us what looks to be just a bad poem off the internet. So I'm reading it, and she's like, well, all right, everyone, what are your thoughts on the paper? And I raise my hand, and she goes, okay, go ahead, Victoria. And I'm like, it sounds like it was written by a kindergartner. Whole class went silent. And as I went to go finish my sentence, she jumped on me like nobody's business. She was like, we don't talk like that in this classroom. That was too negative. And I'm like, well, first off, you didn't let me finish. I was like, but they can fix it XYZ points. And I was like, if you want to see the notes on my paper, I wrote them all down as I read it. She goes, it doesn't matter. You started with a negative comment. We don't talk like that in this classroom. I was like, whoa. I was this close to dropping out, except for the fact that I wanted to write. This close. I'm actually thankful that I didn't drop out of her class, because she did teach me the golden method of writing, critiquing writing, which is you do a positive comment, any negative comments you have or any critiques where they could fix it, and then you do another positive comment. So you bookend it with positive comments. And when I started to get feedback back from that class, because we did a lot of peer editing, a lot. And as I started to get reviews back, I was like, oh, I see what she means. So I started giving that feedback back. And so when I had that person's paper back in front of me after I had the crap feedback and the good feedback. And I say crap versus good because although I still made the same points as I did in this one had all negative comments, this one had positive and negative comments. I saw a shift in the writer's work, which was like, light bulb. So I was able to see the better feedback. And then personally, I was able to see the better feedback as the comments. I was like, oh, okay, that's a really good phrase. I can leave that in there. And then, oh, okay, I see what I need to do. And then I had another positive reinforcement. This is why positive reinforcement works and negative reinforcement does not work. But it was a good learning experience. And then about a month ago, I was in another writing workshop, and this is where I didn't realize, then this is where tone of voice comes into. Over the internet, tone of voice comes completely different, where you can mean one thing and it means another. So I had an adult beverage, I sat down to do my schoolwork, realized we had a reflection due, and then I realized I had no critiques on my paper. It's like, how am I supposed to write a reflection on critiques if I have no critiques? And then I was like, oh, okay, no student feedback, fine, whatever, let me look at the instructors. And I looked at the instructors and I was like, it was just kind of like cursory. It wasn't really anything like substantial. It wasn't anything I could grab onto and say, oh yeah, I can fix this. So because I had the adult beverage and I was kind of miffed that nobody gave me what I considered substantial feedback, I just kind of word vomited negativity onto the page. And that was the first time I had done that in a while. So sent it in, got a grade. The instructor came back and was like, I'm not answering to your tone, that's very offensive, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, okay. Now that I'm sober, I read my work and I was like, oh, shit. I was like, that's not what I meant to. I was like, I didn't mean for it to be taken that way. Oops. So when you write a critique, make sure your tone of voice isn't going to offend the author that you're sending it back to. So, and that happens a lot as bloggers. We'll write a review and it'll come off either completely negative or completely positive, and sometimes we mean the opposite. So tone of voice is everything. And I learned that. And negative criticism, I didn't used to take it lightly. It used to be like my bread and butter. If I had gotten negative criticism, like that was it for that piece. I never touched it again. Now I use it to build upon. And the only reason I'm saying this is because as booktubers, as Instagrammers, as bloggers, as whatever have you, anything you do in life, you're going to receive negative criticism. And I just want to tell you that it does matter, but it doesn't matter. If you're passionate about it and you want to take Joe Schmo's criticism and you want to turn it into something good, do it. If you take Joe Schmo's criticism and you never touch that piece again, what if that one piece could have changed somebody's life? And now that I've reconnected, and I'm going to spin it back to when I was 14, that one girl who has that one single copy of that page, of that work I created, she's the only one that has it. And now that I've reconnected with her as an adult, she said it helped her cope with some things that, unfortunately, at the time, it was very hard for her to cope with. And we didn't get into details or anything, but she thanked me, and she's like, well, now I have bragging rights if you become famous. And besides that, but it helped her cope with something. So what if that piece of work that you're working on means so much to somebody that it changes their life? Think of it that way. If it's changing your life as you write it, what could it do for the reader? Screw Joe Schmo, get rid of negative Nancy, get rid of your inner critic, and just write it. And then I think it was Ernest Hemingway that used to say, write drunk, edit sober. So when you're editing, make sure that you realize that sometimes the reader who's reading it, it's not only you as the writer, it's the reader who is reading it can be impacted by anything you say. And I want to reiterate that because that is important. So just because you get negative comments, just because you get negative reviews, doesn't always mean that what you are working on is worthless. And if you are a booktuber or you are a blogger who gives reviews and you are reviewing a indie author's work, keep in mind that they are the only person who has ever read that. They are the only person working on it. They are the only person who is pouring their heart and soul into it. So if you do come across an indie author like I did, and they want you to review their work, take into consideration that they have spent months or years, or I don't care if it's days, I don't care if it's months, I don't care if it's weeks, I don't care if it's 10, 15 years. If you've spent any amount of time on a piece and you are sending it out to somebody to review, you deserve respect. You demand respect. And that's what I gave my author, who I will keep nameless because I am working with them on their piece. But if you are considering reaching out to a booktuber, you're considering reaching out to a blogger, do it. Put yourself out there. But know that if you want to command respect for that, you have to say, hey, if you think that there are issues with my piece, please address them with me first before you put my piece on blast. I did that out of courtesy for the author because they reached out to me and they're a personal friend of a friend. I couldn't do that to that person without telling them, hey, there's some seriously wrong pieces here. You need to work on them. Even if they didn't want me involved after I gave them that criticism. I even said, if you don't want me involved, by all means, but I had to tell you because I don't want your piece to be out there in the world and you receive multiple negative criticism for it. Negative criticism is a good thing. It's a bad thing. Even the most published authors like Stephen King, they do get negative criticism, but they keep going. So my advice to anybody out there who does anything, whether you do makeup, whether you paint faces, whether you write a novel, you paint, you write, whatever the hell you do it for you. And just take every bit of criticism with a grain of salt. Dust it off your shoulders if it's not worth it. If it's worth it, kind of dust it in your pocket because it'll be worth it later. Do you, but take the negative criticism with a piece of advice. And the only reason I addressed this is because I did have a moment with an author about it. And as a writer and a reader, it affects my everyday life. If I get negative criticism at work, I have to swallow it, say, okay, how can I fix it? And that's the same thing with an author, that's the same thing with a reader. If you're beta reading somebody's work or you're an ARC reader, you need to be aware of the fact that somebody reached out to you, and you need to be respectful of the author, of the publishing company. And you have to have a little bit of respect for yourself that you're not going to slander that person. And after 24 years and reading actively reading for the last 6 months, people's work that haven't been out very long, I've learned to give respect. So, any comments, please leave them below. I would love to have this conversation. I'd love to have moments like this with my audience and see what are your thoughts on negative criticism. And if I get negative criticism on this video, perfect. It'll be a perfect example of how to deal with negative criticism. So, always like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you later. And I hope you all have a great day, and I hope this topic touches you in some way. You all have a great day. Bye.